Welcome to Full Sail University's Career Profiles. My name is E.F. Ortega. Thanks for tuning in. If you're new to this podcast and are wondering what it's all about, it's quite simple. It's Career Profiles is here to inspire. And what we do is we show real life stories from successful professionals who are leaders in their given industry. Today, we have a most distinguished guest. He is a CEO of Bellerive Country Club in St. Louis. For those who don't know, Bellerive is a world-class country club with a golf course that has hosted a lot of regional, national, international competitions. Just as a reference point for those who don't know, I know this, but those who don't know, there's 4 recognized major championships in golf. There's the Masters, there's the US Open, there's the British Open, and there's also the PGA Championship. And Bellerive has hosted it twice, along with several other championships, the BMW Championship, Senior PGA Championship, and the President's Cup, I believe, is coming up soon in a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken. But that's a long list of accomplishments for this specific country club. And just wanted to welcome to the Career Profiles the CEO and General Manager of Bellerive Country Club, Carlos Arraya. Carlos, how are you doing?
Doing great. It's a pleasure to be with you guys or whoever's listening in. Obviously, you said a lot of great things about Bellerive, and we're very fortunate to have that pretty significant history here in St. Louis, Missouri.
Yeah, it's a long list. As I was doing my research, I was like, wow, heavy hitters. So I would imagine you've seen the best of the best. You've seen the Tiger Woodses and the Rory McIlroys and all these wonderful people that have crossed by. I mean, tell us a little bit about just some of the experiences that you had now that you are the CEO of this country club. Just give us a little bit of the history of the club.
Well, Bellerive's now 127 years young.
Wow.
It's in its 3rd location. It's moved from the city out west. Let's say the founding fathers members saw the opportunity that the suburbs were a great place to start families. And that was tremendous foresight because this area is pretty rich in its elevation changes, which makes this site pretty unique. That's why they call it the Ridge. We have a really unique vein on the backside that everyone that comes and visits the club, whether you're a player, a guest, or just coming through and we're hosting you, it's pretty spectacular on the Ridge. As far as what my history is and the connections that I've made while being at Bellerive, I've been fortunate to be in the industry 29 years now. I'm aging myself, but it's been that long. So I've had the very good fortune. And when I was 18 years old, to meet Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus when they were wrapping up their wonderful careers in the mid 90s. Wow. And then that was when Tiger was starting. The Tiger era was starting. So that's when I started my career. So I was fortunate to see that. Unfortunately, I wasn't in a big club, so I wasn't fortunate enough to be involved in it. And then when I got to Bellerive, my journey allowed me to see some of the different competitions along the way. And then when I got to meet those guys on site, the Rory McIlroys, the Jason Days, the Brooks Koepkas, the Gary Woodlands, of course, Tiger, Phil Mickelson, the list goes on and on. I think one of the biggest takeaways in the interaction is just like all of us are human beings. And sometimes these athletes, we almost forget that they have emotions and families and everything that comes with normal day-to-day life. And just getting inside the ropes and seeing the conversations. When you're watching sports on TV, you can sometimes read lips of words you shouldn't say. In this case, you're reading the lips and hearing the lips of folks talking about everyday life. I mean, it wasn't just about a golf shot. They were talking about kids, the dogs, and that part of it is really an inspirational piece to all of us because you think it's something so much more high profile. Now, when they're getting ready to have a shot, they're locked in and they're talking things that none of us could ever imagine in a golf swing. But just that component of the humanitarian part was something that's really telling. And yeah, they're playing for big dollars, and more so now since Liv has come on. When they were here in 18, still a significant purse for the 100th PGA Championship. But outside of the purse, they were humans and they were friends to each other. And like all sports, there's rivalries, and their competitive juices are what you can imagine. And I think some takeaways that I got, and one that I thought was pretty one that I'll take with me forever is how well they treated our staff, how they treated everyone that was helping serve them and host them. And they may never come back, right? That was the way we approached that championship, that this may be one and done. Luckily for us, we're not, but we knew that could be the last one, and we want to do everything that we could to make sure that they had a great experience. But in turn, they were also reciprocating the appreciation for all the things that we were trying to do to go above and beyond to ensure that happened.
Excellent. So we have Carlos Arraya, the CEO of Bellerive Country Club, with us. We have a broad audience. We have people that are career professionals, but also we have students from Full Sail that are listening to this, that are just beginning their journey. So I'm interested in, I'm a storyteller, so I like getting to the beginning parts and to see how the rise began. You're a CEO now. Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm not mistaken, is it, you must be one of the few Hispanic general managers and CEOs in the country? Are you the only one, or are you one of the few ones?
Well, there's over 16,000 country clubs in the United States. I don't think I'm the only one, but I'm pretty sure I'm the only one in the top 25 country clubs. Probably one of the few Puerto Ricans. Let's get a little more granular.
Yes.
That might be the only Puerto Rican to have hosted a championship of that magnitude, and getting ready to host two more in the future. So to answer your question, there is a journey associated with that, to being Hispanic and representing that community. In 2018, you mentioned storytelling, the amount of support that I garnered from family and friends, and then people had no idea, celebrating what Hispanics are doing and what. And again, I'm very fortunate to have that nationality, and I'm proud of it. But just knowing how much it means to people to have success on the side, and a lot of people got to learn my journey along the way. That was also even more inspiring for them.
Excellent. That's interesting. I was watching or reading some of your LinkedIn, and mm-hmm. I saw that you have a background in computer engineering. And then I saw that right after that, you got right into the golf course industry and management. And tell us a little bit about that. How did that change go about?
Well, I was 18 when I started. Right out of high school, my parents, I went right into college, and like everyone else, I had no idea what I was doing. And back then, and it feels like an eon ago, you didn't have computers, right? You didn't have the internet. It's high speed. By the time you dialed up and got to information, it took forever, and you had to move on. So it was really word of mouth and flyers. So my family are deep in engineer roots, and my dad thought that was going to be my career path. Those of you who are listening that are Latino know that when the parent tells you what you're going to do, and you're living under that household, that's what you're doing. So that's how that started. And one thing that I'll say that I did gain from my family was, when you start something, you finish something. So I'd already started that track of education. And when I started on that journey, I was looking for a part-time job to fit in the schedule, to make money and pay for things that I needed to handle. And I wanted to leave my parents' house because I wanted to make the choice that I was going to do something different than be an engineer. I worked on really housekeeping and cleaning and waxing and floors.
Wow.
And people who have waxed floors will know that is the hardest job in America. I know that the equipment's gotten way better because we have a couple of those units here. But when I was waxing floors, I'd tell our maintenance team, and they'd look at me like a dinosaur, but I'd tell them that, hey, it was so much harder. And I happened to look up on this billboard where I was at, it showed a job posting for a golf course maintenance employee. And it fit the hours. And it was a 75-cent raise. So I went from like $4.35 to $5.05 an hour. So I was going to make that jump. And so when I got on the golf course, the morning I started, I was raking bunkers, which is kind of the entry-level job for anyone who starts at a club on a golf course. And as soon as the sun came up that morning, I was like, man, I love this. This is awesome. And that's the first time I had been exposed to work that I really enjoyed. So I finished my engineering degree, and right shortly after that, I was so blessed to meet some folks and mentored me to get into the golf course management side of the business. And so I just went right from that educational track into golf course management, and I got both of those. I had a plan to get my bachelor's degree, but as one of my mentors says, you have a PhD and everything else right now. You just need to keep going what you're doing. You're doing just fine. So it worked out.
That's interesting. So, wow, little bit of a detour, and then from there is when you kind of found your groove and you stood in that field. Now, obviously, you're a CEO now and general manager. It's a completely different thing, but you sort of moved into a career in managing golf courses, or I should say, a growing grass for these golf courses. Tell us a little bit about how that started and who you met and who are the people that helped you along that way to kind of get you situated on that path in the beginning.
Okay, so you like the storytelling. So I'll give you the story. So I started in '96 on the golf course, and even though I had a passion for it, there was also a really cutthroat approach back then. There's not this attention to detail in the team member experience or the employee experience. It was you work as many hours for a little much as money, and you like it, right? So
Yeah.
I grew up in that hard knock environment, but also was fortunate enough in 2001. I was at a pivotal position in my career because I just got my golf course management degree. I was assistant superintendent. And back then in Florida, where I was, you take a career path towards multi-course facilities. The more golf courses, the more managerial experience. Again, with no internet, you put that on your resume. That was a stepping stone into being a leader, a director of grounds, or things that I wanted to be. So in 2001, on that slow internet, our association launched its first job board, and I looked at it, and I remember there were like 4 job postings, and there was a posting for a really, really prestigious multi-course facility, and that's where I met John Cunningham in 2001. And the story with John, when I went to work for him, as I told you, 5 years prior, you were almost obsolete to an organization. When I went to work for John at this really great place called Black Diamond Ranch in Locanto, Florida, my first day of work, I grab all the tools to go out to work, and I'll never forget it. He says, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to go lead the team. I'm going to go to work." He goes, No, you get in this golf cart." And I said, "Okay." I get in the golf cart, and he goes, "I didn't hire you to cut cups. I hired you to lead the people, to train the people, to make us elite." I was like, wow. That was the first time I was introduced to someone who had a mindset that people were the number one asset of an organization. And we had quite a bit of employees. We had a tremendous uphill battle to get these 3 golf courses up to state standards. And under his tutelage, John would be the person I credit the most that taught me about business and people from the age of, I was probably 23 to like 27. I worked for John. And that shaped my career completely. I think if that did not happen, I would not be sitting here where I am today, without a doubt. I don't care what the education is. I think that had always been the stepping stone. And he's a best friend, a family friend. We've stayed connected for so many years. And by chance, he's the general manager, CEO of a big club now too. So we both grew up dirt diggers.
Wow.
And now we're both running clubs and have really, really great opportunities.
What an amazing story. So you started off. Now, for those who are interested in students in leadership, I think this is a perfect example of the value of mentorship. You have to have people around you that support you and that build you up and that gets you to a point where they prepare you for the next step. And you had that. You had obviously someone in John who was there for you, who built you up, who got you prepared and got you ready. And as the time went on, from what I understand, I believe you started a business. Was it with him or was it with somebody else?
Oh yeah. So we had started a business venture in water management, and by chance he was starting his career to go into this general manager leadership role. So we started it. It didn't completely go the way we wanted it. We just kind of paused it. He went where he went. I was fortunate enough to meet my now wife, and then we got married. So that kind of it was always simmering. And we came up with a different business model. We're ready to launch that. And I'm a man of faith, so God had a different plan. John went to another job, and then I ended up in St. Louis. So there were a lot of moving parts. So every time we were ready to launch these really great business initiatives, we were moved to be in different locations. I will say, had we started those businesses, I probably would be much more successful and have a lot more money. And I'm going to play. But that what I'm doing now, and what he's doing now is way more fulfilling. But yeah, we've had a lot of different business ventures. We have those strategic. We were always strategic as friends and working for them, and it's always carried on. We probably have more patents in our minds than we ever have put to work. So that's what happens when you put two creatives together that want to help people and help organizations.
So both of you kind of start that climb. You start moving in and you start moving into different other clubs where you start now, if I'm not mistaken, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but you became a general manager very early on.
Yes.
Is that correct? And tell us about that.
Another great story. So in 2007, I was working at a club. After I left John, I went to Vero Beach in 05. And from 05 to 07, I led their projects on the golf course. And it was one of the first real, what we would call golf course. It wasn't really a redesign, renovation. It was a redesign. And that was the terminology that was used. And we redesigned it, reconfigured it completely from the tees to the greens, and worked with Fazio, and was really, really successful in doing that. By chance, many of you know 07, 08, you remember the nightmares of the residential demise or recession that hit, where everything was just in tremendous flux. And our GM left that club, and in Florida, peak seasons from about October till Easter. He left in December in peak season. The president met with me and said, "Hey, we need your help. Would you be willing to lead the club until we get a GM in place?" And I said, "Absolutely." So, not a big computer stuff going on back then. A lot of it was still Scantron sheets, but they gave me they gave me all these big binders, and I went up to the clubhouse to help that team. And by chance, 4 months later, I get the call, "Hey, we want to talk to you. We want to meet the GM and want to introduce you to the new GM." And I go up with all my stuff and hand it back over and the keys, thinking, man, finally someone else gets to take on this headache. And they said, "Hey, we'd like to introduce you to the new GM." And like looking around, like, would you be willing to do the job? We've watched you and we've interviewed people, and we think you're doing a much better job and a much better candidate at the age of whatever, how old I was, 30, maybe close to 30. And I said, sure. So I did that from 2008 till 2014. So 6 years I GM'd that club through some really, really, really tough times. I like to think that was not a general manager role. That was more of a just, you're captain putting holes out in the ship, because it was cutting costs, cut people. It taught me a humanitarian side. Prior to that time, I think I would call myself the Terminator. I'd be quick to terminate people from their job for falling short of high expectations. But when people were really struggling, or still in some ways still struggle today, there are different challenges than they were back then, right? But that time gave me a front row seat of how people really get impacted by the economy. And it just taught me a lot of hard knocks of, man, I really care about people, and I want to invest in people differently. So I went from really growing grass to seeing the opportunity how to grow people. So that was kind of a pivot point.
Interesting.
And I had still a couple mentors along the way, still John and others that I met, and a gentleman named Chuck Cook, who was by chance was a member at Bellerive.
Oh, wow.
He was a member of Bellerive and a member.
There you go.
I had no idea. I didn't know where Bellerive was, other than it was in St. Louis. But if I got off the plane, I would have never found it, because back then we didn't have Google Maps yet, I don't think. So I got a chance to see it. So that's what I did for a couple of years. And my family really needed me. So I chose to, after long discussions with my wife, made a choice to take I would say, professional sacrifice and stepping away from the GM role, going back to growing grass, though I had a passion for people, because the kids were at a time where they needed me at home, and that those hours were a little more conducive to being available, being in at 5 and gone by 3 or 3:30. So that's how I did it. And then I moved to a club, and a year and a half later, John was at Bellerive, and he called me and says, "Hey, I'm getting ready to be a GM. Do you want to come up here and do some amazing things with me before I move on to be a GM?" I said, sure. So then I came up to St. Louis in 2005. Begrudgingly, my wife did not want to come up to the middle of the country. But it's been a great turn of events, and this is my 9th summer. It's pretty amazing to be able to be here. But that's the short compressed version of how I ended up through the GM role.
Wow, that's interesting. So when I interviewed Gabriel in the first episode, one of the things that I noticed, just a common theme with leadership in general, is the ability to pivot at a moment's notice when things change, when things don't necessarily go your way. You have to learn how to pivot. And I'm seeing the same kind of principle in your life as far as when things, the economy happened. It just happened. It's 2008. Everything's crashing. There's a lot of change, and you were able to absorb that and to really shepherd organization through that type of a rough patch, and you came out of that shining. So I think that's interesting. That's one of the things that I value, and I see a lot in leaders and true leaders, is to be able to pivot. Now you moved up. You kept on moving up. John, that connection with John brought you up to where you're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
And interesting. You said that you were growing grass, and then you learn how to grow people. That's an excellent insight. Tell us a little bit about your experience at Bellerive and how that began, and how you kind of worked your way up to where you're at right now.
Yeah. So when John left in 2017, he came to me and said, "Hey, look, you got an opportunity. They don't know who you are because you've not been there very long, but if you got a plan together, you got a championship in 2018, you can shine, and your career could take off as a director of grounds and agronomy." And I said, "Okay, let's take a look. What do you think? And how much time do I got to prepare?" He goes, "Well, they want to meet with you tomorrow morning." So I didn't have a lot of time. So you talk about pivot. I spent that night just talking through, but just kind of mapping out what the people component, what we needed to do on the golf course. We had some challenges with the putting surfaces, so we had to figure out how to overcome that. And I put a pretty comprehensive plan together on paper. And when I met with the president, the vice president, and the general manager and the greens chairman in the boardroom, they said, "Hey, we really need you to help stabilize it. We're going to see what happens." And I was honest with them. I said, "There's no see what happens. I'll lead you to where you want to go, and here's how we're going to do it." And they said, "Okay, well, we believe in you." And the general manager says, "I believe in you." And they gave me all the resources to get us through 2018. And I think if you look up all the stuff from the championship in 18, Bellerive and our team, and John Deere sponsored, there were so many pieces associated with what we did. That was pretty amazing. And I think that really put a shine on my leadership. And I hated that because I wanted nothing more than just to be a general manager. I felt like I got a taste of that when John left. The GM who said he'd take care of me left. Then right after that, it felt like everyone was leaving. I was the lone man standing. And so I got really close to the president, the vice president in 2018. And then the new general manager comes on, who's also a good friend, Michael. Michael joined in January. And he says, "I really gonna need you in August of 2018. I'm like, "I got you, man. The golf course is fine. You don't have to worry about anything inside the ropes. I got this. You got that, right? We got it." He goes, "No, I need you." The week of the championship. And I was confused. It was his introductory press conference. And he says, "My wife's pregnant and she's due that week." I'm like, "You got it. What is going on? Like, am I like the token kid for everything here? Like, I take care of everybody." So all kidding aside, we get through that championship. To get back to the story, the Monday after the championship, I was selling a renovation project to the club. The Monday after, we were selling a major investment project to the club that group unanimously supported. And we ventured into a $22 million project. And the general manager said, "Carlos, you got great leadership. We want to promote you as our assistant general manager. And we want you to take on the role of operations and projects." And it was a big job. And fortunate for me, I had hired a young man named Nick, and Nick was my superintendent. And he moved into the running the team, and he has the same philosophy. We have very much aligned. Nick started working for me when he was mid-20s, and same thing, grow people. He's better at growing grass than me, and he knows how to grow people. So it was a perfect combination for what Bellerive needed. And And then I was up in the clubhouse working in food and beverage, working on the facilities, the engineering team, the rackets. We didn't have HR back then. We had a lot of challenges, and lo and behold, this little thing called COVID came around.
Oh yeah.
And then
Yeah.
COVID, we were on Zoom almost every other day, trying to understand. I mean, there was life and death for a lot of people, right? We were all scared. We didn't know what was happening. But we had employees, and we had to put that to the side and focus on how to take care of our employees, finish our projects, and still be a refuge for the members for even if it was to go food, right? So I was involved in all those Zoom calls before Zoom exploded. And during that time, again, my leadership was seen by that membership and the board, because all those calls happened with the exec board. 2021, right after, like to say that as we started to understand COVID, no matter where you stood on that, there were things that still were threatening to certain folks. Michael, our GM, in April came to me and says, "I'm out." I said, "You're out? What does that mean?" "I'm leaving. My family's ready to move somewhere warmer. We his wife wanted something near the water. I mean, everyone's wife wants something near the water, but something near the water." So I get it. I was looking at opportunities too. I had a couple opportunities in the Northeast, and so I was like shocked. I didn't know that he would want to do that. But to be fair, I kind of knew there were other things that were happening organizationally, that there were conversations that I was having that kind of made it seem like it was going to happen. And he'd always been looking for opportunities. So when it happened, the president came to me and says, "Hey, there'll be no surge." I said, "Okay, so what does that mean? You're going to be our guy." So I said, "All right." So when Michael left in August of 2021, I went and talked to him, the president, and they put a search committee together, and we talked about the vision of how to improve the member experience and how are you going to do that. And my question was emphatic and to the point: through the team member experience. The only way you're going to help deliver a service is through all the people that deliver that service. If they come to work and they hate where their locker room is, if they hate what they eat, if they hate their uniform and they hate their boss and they hate their processes, they're going to hate how to deliver. So we got to start there. And even though I was assistant general manager, we hadn't done that. So we were trying to recreate that in the midst of what I would consider COVID to do, empower employees to be amazing human beings, to feel that they were taking ownership of their time and how they wanted to spend their time at work. So we had to recreate our brand from the team member experience, and the board at the time supported me. And then I was announced as the general manager and then CEO. And we went into ripping and roaring, and we made a lot of changes. And we went from we almost doubled our revenue in over a couple of years. And now we're one of the biggest platinum country clubs in the country. So we're pretty proud of that.
That's one of the things I was going to ask you. I saw on your LinkedIn the Platinum Country Club designation.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what it was, but it sounded special. So I looked into it and I said, "Oh my gosh, this is literally the elite of the elite." Mm-hmm. This is a top designation. This is not for the faint of heart. This is for the best of the best. Tell us a little bit about that, about how that happened, how you got to that point to become a part of the Platinum Club.
Well, the club's been in that sphere for some time. My predecessors, Jeffrey Creefel, who's now a mentor, great guy, congressional, they did that long ago, and they were part of that. I mean, we weren't ranked where we are today, but they had the foresight to know that Bellerive wanted to be part of our mission statement is to be a nationally recognized golf course. Well, the only way you do that is to get on the national stage, and you can't host a championship every single year unless you're a nice little place in Georgia called Augusta.
Yeah.
National, right? So we knew that they knew that they had to brand themselves a certain way. So they did that. And then when I became general manager, we put an emphasis on the team member and the service experience. And all we did, we have to submit and hold up to a certain standard. And we did that. And every time we submit, then we get a ranking. So we went from in the 30s now up to 23, and we've just submitted again for this year. And we're hopeful that our ranking is as, or if not better than what we've been. And we'll see. A lot of clubs are doing a lot of great things. Excellence, as I tell this team, is not for everyone, but it's who we are. So if you're part of who we are, then excellence is the expectation. And excellence doesn't mean you don't fail. Excellence means you learn from those failures.
Interesting. So that's in the last guest that I interviewed, that's one of the common themes too that I learned from him was just to operate in a spirit of servant leadership, servanthood, humility, but also a spirit of excellence to do things the right way at all times. And I'm seeing that same theme. And that's one of the things that I really wanted to touch base with for students who are getting into a career, getting into any type of industry it's not just what you know, it's obviously who you know, but it's also who you are and what you do, your level of excellence. And that's what makes people stand out. And that's obviously what caused you to stand out. I have a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up. Um, I have to ask this. I'm always asking people in leadership about this. All of us, I'm pretty sure you are a well-read guy. You're a CEO, so you must be reading a whole bunch of books. Self-education, always a big deal. What define for me in your terms and in your experience, what is leadership?
Oh, that's a great question. Wow. Well, I tell this to our team, and to give you a little background, we have about 304 employees on our roster. So I think that when you're leading 304 employees and you have 450 members in the full status, and you have all classes 577 members, multiply them by 3. So you got about 2,000 people that you're interacting with. Our community of people is 2,000. So I lead that. So I define leadership in a very simple term is, you said the word servant, but I also think that you're focused on making sure that all those people are getting the value of what they signed up for, whether it's a member who's participating in events or activities, or an employee who signed up to be our bag drop attendant or a server, whatever they are. How are we providing them a certain level of support? And if you're not in tune with that, and you just have these big, audacious strategic goals, though I'm a CEO, I'm very much in tune. My going through the operations has allowed me to not ever forget that. So my leadership is always about that entry level. How does it affect everyone? How do they feel? And can we grow that? How do we grow that? And then the other part of leadership is a word that I use with a lot of people: accountability. You're accountable. If you want, everyone wants these titles, but no one wants to be accountable. And yes. I'll share this quick story. We put in a Starbucks. We're the first club in the Midwest to put a Starbucks in, and we got baristas and we got all the drinks, and everyone thinks it's the craziest thing, right? Well, we moved it into a space that members didn't enjoy. And I tell you, that Sunday, opening Sunday football weekend, my inbox was just getting flooded. I'm supposed to be enjoying football, and I'm just getting flooded about this Starbucks machine. Why is it here? Who made it? Who put it there? Tuesday, I sent a note through my communications teams directly to all those members. My fault. I did it, right? It's owning those failures for your team, whether it's 2 people or 305 or 2,000 people. And accountability is a big piece of that. People have a hard time with that because everyone wants to be perfect. We live in a social media world where you're trying to see how many likes you got or how many views you got. And guess what? When you're in your leadership, you got all those eyes on you.
Yeah,
it's 2,000 times 2. So you got 4,000 eyeballs watching how you are handling situations. When things are good, that's the easiest part. That truly is. When things are great and everyone's happy in service, that's the easiest part. And when things aren't great, and we have a couple of things that aren't great. I did a tour today with our superintendent who's not happy about a couple of things. And we talked about how to fix it. How do you own it? You can own it on Tuesday and we move on. So I think that's the big piece when you think about, just to sum it up, think about those people that are working in your organization and you serve. And then ultimately, how are you accountable for all of that? There's so many other things we can talk about. We don't have enough time for it, but I think accountability, and we've lost the ability to be accountable because we want to be perfect. And that's not an attainable status. It's just not.
Right. Great. This is Carlos Arraya. We are interviewing him, the CEO and general manager of Bellerive Country Club. And I just have one last question. It's one of those things that I always try to find when I interview different leaders from different industries. And it's overcoming adversity. Just give us, you've already given us a couple of examples, but just give us in general, what's your approach? Because I believe that leaders and people in their careers need to understand how to manage adversity, how to manage things when they don't go your way, when they don't, we as humans, we tend to create these movies in our mind of how we think things are going to happen. And then when they don't happen, we're upset and we're ticked off and we're, trying to make excuses. So give us just an example of one of the things that you've done or one of the mental models that you have to really help you overcome adversity in your life.
I'm working on it every day and being aware of that it's a work in progress because the adversity changes, right? And you mentioned we're going to host 2026 BMW Championship, and in 2030, this club's going to be an international stage. So we got a lot of adversity with our brand, right? We have a lot of adversity with our service levels. So there are a lot of different things that, when you look at adversity or things you to overcome, it's just being aware that you're a work in progress every day as a leader, and I think you have to be okay with that. I report to the president, chairman of the board. That individual changes every 2 years. I'm getting ready to get a new president next year, new style of leadership that I got to get used to. He's got to get used to me, even though I know him pretty well. There's adversity in that, right? Relationships, and you're working at it every single day. And the only way you're going to get better is if you get resolve and learn from it. And one of the things that, at least from young management team members, and even some of my senior leaders here who have big operations, multi-million-dollar expense lines, dealing with the emotions of adversity is probably the number one thing that people struggle with. Everything is so emotional in the world today, in a world that we're very divided on political factions, on even, teams. If you love certain teams, people are divided. I mean, people are just going nuclear over certain things. You have to be able to understand that you have to keep your emotions in check through all that adversity. Even if a goal is compromised, never compromise your integrity through those adversities. Never lie about it. Own it, like I said earlier, about accountability, and just deal with it head on. I was told that early on in my career. You've probably heard this terminology: just swallow the frog early, eat the frog,
Yeah.
get it out of the way. Because if you postpone it, it just gets worse and worse. Just get all that ugly stuff out of the way early on in life and in your day, and just move on. And adversity is part of growth. I mean, it's painful. I mean, we talk about it all the time here as truth serum. Fail, but if you're going to fail, teach about that failure. That failure can be small in nature or big in nature, but do not compromise our core values. Do not compromise the safety of our staff and our membership, and be sure that you're teaching along the way. That's the one thing that I think is uber important also as far as dealing with adversity, is the emotions and the teachings that come from that, both from the leader and the employees.
Interesting. So we have seen, and I do want to thank you for your time. It's been fascinating to see so far, the two people that I've interviewed, there's some common themes, and you have definitely exemplified that. We just want to thank you, first of all, for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this interview. You are an inspiration. I'm Puerto Rican. Okay. I see you as an inspiration. It's a big deal in Puerto Rico to see someone as a CEO of a major championship golf club course that's, regionally known, internationally known. So we just want to thank you for your time, and we appreciate the wisdom that you've dropped on all of us. And thank you very much. Is there anything that you want to say to students? Just any last thing, just a quick word that you want to tell them that will inspire them to continue to move forward and to take that next step in their career?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to. I mean, first, also thank you guys. I mean, I never look at these opportunities as like I'm so privileged that someone's looking to speak to me. I don't ever look at myself with that. You keep saying my title, and it's like, for me, I'm still that little kid that's just trying to get better every day. So even though there's gray hair growing and the beard is getting gray, I think from the students, and we have a lot of interns here, and we have a lot of assistants in training and managers in trainings, if you will. And a lot of the things that I share with them is enjoy the journey. So many times when you're in school, and I get it, you got debt, school debt, you got the pressures of a household, you may be in a relationship, you may be in turmoil trying to figure out where you are spiritually. There may be a lot of different challenges, but I think you have to enjoy the journey. And too many times we're so ready to go to the next thing and to go make more money. And I could tell you there's so many people that are in our industry who make good money and are miserable because they haven't enjoyed the journey. They haven't taken the opportunity to really highlight where they were trying to go. They made choices because they were a little bit too hasteful because they were trying to get there too quickly. And instead of taking a small leap, they've taken big leaps, and it may have rewarded them financially, but it ring is hollow. So enjoy the journey. Be accepting of constructive feedback. You need that. And if you think you're always right, I think you struggle with that. We deal with that. We got about 100 seasonal staff members. They're all in high school and college. I love all of them. And they give us a lot of feedback, and we give them a lot of feedback. And being able to exchange that makes us better and will make you better as students. And I think that don't be discouraged, and if you've learned anything from this 45-minute conversation is there is no linear line to success. There is not.
Yes.
And
Yes.
just because you're in school for a certain thing, it may take you a different direction, and success is not always defined by what we think in our minds. And you mentioned having this movie of what we think we're going to be. It's never that way. The ending, it's one of those books where you remember those books when you get to the end of chapter 1, you can go to 10 to go this way or 13. That's life. And so in those books, the older we got, those books, when you went to chapter 10, you died in the end of chapter 10. And in this case, it's not as intense, but sometimes we get to a dead end. That's the point, and you may have to go back to find your way forward. And that's kind of what I've tried to do. You've taken a step back to be a superintendent, gotten back to work with John. That is one of the most enjoyable experiences, to work with your best friend a second time at a club like this. I will never work for him a third time. I love him to death. It ain't happening. It was enough. We can see each other, and that's it. So enjoy the journey, because I've been able to do that, and I hope to continue to do that as wherever it takes me. Because even though I'm here, I hope I'm here till the very end of my career. But if the journey takes me in a different direction because Bellerive's thinking it, or opportunity presents itself that my wife wants to be near the water, I don't know. I don't want that to be the case. Enjoy the journey. That's the bottom line.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. We definitely thank you. And wow, there's so much to unpack here. I don't know if you know this, but I'm actually planning to write a book about leadership. And is it okay if I use this interview in the book? I mean, I'm kind of thinking of maybe using some of the leaders in a book that I'm creating called Dream Makers. It's a book mainly for students who are trying to get ahead and trying to move ahead in their career. And I think you are the perfect example of someone who is not just a dreamer, not just someone with a big dream, not a maker, someone who just makes things happen, but you're a dream maker. You're someone who's actually made your dreams come true. So thank you so much for this time. It's been an honor. And wow, I can't wait. Now I'm going to have to look forward now to Bellerive and what they're doing and see. You said 2030 was the President's Cup. Is that correct?
Yeah, and 26th BMW Championship. So we got about 23 months and about 4 days to get ready for 2026. So our team's ready for that. All right. We are wrapping things up. And again, what a fantastic story. Just one of the best stories I've ever heard. If there is the American dream is still possible, you're seeing it. It is still possible. And Carlos, you are definitely the embodiment of that. So thank you so much for your time. And that's it for right now. This is Career Profiles. This is E.F. Ortega. You can find us on YouTube, on all major podcast platforms, and also on careerprofiles.substack.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a wonderful day.